record holder for the most yards ever passing in a single game, Rohan Davey. Emmitt Smith joins us in studio.
It's the first time I played in such a place that had that much noise.
Jock, throw a rock and you'll hit a 3-star cornerback in Louisiana.
Jock Talk is sponsored by Locke Meredith Injury Lawyers.
All right, well, Charles Hanagriff needs no introduction. He's a legend when it comes to covering LSU athletics. You can catch him on the radio, pregame, postgame, and he has a Monday through Friday show as well. Charlie, thanks for coming down. Great to see you as always.
Anytime, JD. Always good to talk to you.
If only we had something to talk about. It's been pretty boring around here.
Well, it changes from minute to minute too, so we gotta hustle up.
Charlie and I were joking. We hope this thing doesn't become dated. We have to set these things up on a specific time, meet, chat, and then hopefully our cell phones don't have like 3 breaking stories by the time we're done with this. But just overall, to me, we look forward to football all summer long. Jay Johnson took a big chunk out of the summer for us, right, with another national championship. But it hasn't been a fun year. Even the victories, like when they beat Florida and South Carolina, kind of a root canal. And then you've got a firing of a coach, a firing of an athletic director. Brian Kelly and LSU can't make nice after the split. It's been rough. It's been a tough season.
And it reminds me a lot of the 98 season. It had some similarities to this, not exactly, but in 1998, LSU was ranked in the top 10 or so at the beginning of the season and got to the end of September, and they were ranked in the top 6 and lost a close game to Georgia. And it was sort of the beginning of the end for Jerry DiNardo. Now, he didn't get fired that year. He got fired the next year, but up until that point, he had been riding high, and everything had gone well. And then even with a really experienced team, that team had some real LSU legends on it, like Kevin Falk and Booger McFarland and Todd McClure and Herb Tyler was a senior quarterback. And it just went south on them, and that's what this season has kind of reminded me of.
Yeah, and you talk about expectations. We've been around long enough. I think that Brian Kelly's record at LSU through his first 3 years was pretty similar to Jerry DiNardo's. It was almost kind of identical, both 3-0 in bowls and whatnot. But obviously, Brian Kelly being paid a lot more money, expectations a lot higher. Brian Kelly off the heels of 3 national championships in 2 decades. Jerry DiNardo, on the other hand, they hadn't won a national championship since 1958. And, to fire a coach with a 71% winning percentage and a guy who was basically 2-1 in the SEC, that tells you where we're at, we are right now. Of course, he's a victim of modern day, and yet he benefits from modern day with all the money he's going to walk away with.
What I've decided here in the last month is that everything that I learned through all the coaching searches that I covered before, I can throw out the window now, because this is a completely different landscape. We used to think, long time ago, that you couldn't really fire a coach until you got into November. Well, we threw that out the window better than a decade ago. Then it was, you can't really fire a coach with a winning record or that's coming off a win. Well, we threw that out the window. Then it was, well, you can't really expect a coach to leave that has significant postseason possibilities. That was Brian Kelly, right? They could have gone to the playoffs. Well, we threw that out the window, okay? Now it's, well, you can't really hire a coach from a team that's in the playoffs, that might even have a bye in the playoffs, that could win a national championship. That coach wouldn't leave, right? He might. So we can throw all of those things out of the window, and be it because of the new college football calendar, the playoff, NIL, transfer portal, whatever reason you want to give, probably a little bit of all of those things. A lot of the truths that we used to think about coaching changes are no longer valid.
Yeah. The calendar, you bring that up. Like, we covered Paul Maneri, and the Major League Draft was always something that he couldn't stand where it fell. It was they were getting ready for a super regional or something. The calendar is not friendly to these guys. Like, in defense of Brian Kelly, when he left Notre Dame, some people said, how could he leave them when they're on the verge of making a playoff? He has no choice. He can't stay, right? I mean, you have to make these decisions, and they're not time friendly.
From the day the regular season ends in college football to signing day this year is 4 days, 96 hours worth of find a coach that is going to be in place to tell the kids that are coming in, this will be your coach, or get to signing day and say, sign with us, sight unseen. We can't tell you who the coach is going to be. It's a heck of a decision to have to make. And then if you are in a bowl game, which LSU is now in a bowl game, you have a month's worth of practices and team meetings and things like that before you get to the game itself, and then the transfer portal. So ideally, you would like as much of that time as possible to occur with the new coach in the building, even if he doesn't coach the bowl game, to sort of introduce himself, to give them an idea so that you can retain as much of your – some of these guys are going to the transfer portal no matter what. But I think a lot of them are trying to wait and see, hey, what's going to happen here? And so the sooner you can get that coach in, the better. But you don't have a late late portal period anymore. So the portal's going to be done in January, and your 95% or 98% of your high school signees are going to be done in December. So time is of the essence.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to get caught too much talking about the past, but in the past, you would kind of know who's coming back next year. So going into a bowl game, hey, we can build some momentum. We have a good idea. Now, with it being like this, guys in and out, and I think you were talking about today, the new head coach, whoever he is, will bring in a new offense, new defensive scheme. So that all is going to get torn down and reestablished in the spring. So, but I do think a bowl game for this group would be more beneficiary than not playing one.
It is. I think it's less important than it used to be because you're turning over more of your roster. When you were turning over, say, 25 to 30% of your roster, just your seniors were graduating, you had some guys go pro, a transfer or two, you brought back 70% of your team. Now that number is probably closer to 45 to 50% of your team, and that's for teams that are keeping coaches. So what the benefit to it is, I don't know that it's necessarily as much the football as it is the relationships. You get a coach in the building that can talk to them. A new coach gets hired December 2nd, okay, pick a day. Well, they start practice on December the 10th. Well, he's not going to put in his staff and all of his schematics and all that stuff in there before that. You're just going to go have football practice. But it's about the relationship. It's about starting to build a trust level with those players and give them a real reason to come back, or give them a reason, say, hey, listen, it's probably best you don't fit what we're trying to do. It's probably best that you go somewhere else.
And if you're Verge Ausberry, who's been in the circle at LSU for a long time, the meetings, the coaching searches, all that stuff, your first assignment is to hire a football coach, which I joked every time they hire an LSU football coach, it's like the next presidential election. It's the most important of our lifetime. We've got to get it right.
And it happens every 4 years, roughly.
Perfect. I just lobbed it over the plate for Charlie.
Yeah.
Knocked it out of the park. Saw Warren Morris yesterday, by the way, who was presented 30-year anniversary of the greatest home run in LSU history coming up. But, Verge, your first assignment, hire a head football coach. That's a pretty daunting task. And there's just so many parts that he's got to massage, right? Frank Wilson has his share of support. Is he going to be the next head coach? Probably not. But the team is rallying around him, and they're trying to win as many games as they can for him. Yet, who's the next head coach going to be? And then how many of the current assistants are retained? And it's kind of like surgery. We remove one piece. Is it connected to another piece? And just a lot to consider. A lot of politics, a lot of dynamics. Nothing new there. Right, Charlie?
Here's my confidence level in Verge Ausberry. Anybody that would come into this athletic director's job, and I think I've been here through 6 or 7 of them now, first of all, do you understand the landscape? Do you have the experience level at this level, the Southeastern Conference, and do you know exactly what this job entails? Because they're all a little bit different, and this one is certainly different. So do you have the experience level? Well, Verge has been here for a very long time. He understands the landscape, both academically, politically, football, athletically. He understands the entire thing. Second thing is he a football guy? Okay, and look, I love all the sports, okay? I'm a sports fan through and through, but understand that the last athletic director hired 2 national championship coaches, really 3 if you count him promoting Jay Clark, and was shown the door. Why? Because the football hire didn't get right. So do you have the experience level? Yes. Are you a football guy? Yes. And then the third thing would be, are you an LSU guy? Because this place is unique. Well, Verge Ausberry checks all 3 of those boxes. So he is as qualified as anybody I could think of to go off and look for the next LSU coach. And he's also got, listen, nobody, this is the other thing I know about LSU football coaching searches, nobody does them exactly by themselves, regardless of what one former athletic director said about I am the search. No, you get some input. You get a lot of help. So That's as good as you can do right now.
Yeah. I am the search. It always struck me. Sorry for the nerdy Star. I am the Senate. The Palpatine. I'm in control here. But, and a guy like Nick Saban, okay, is he kind of helping out? Is he kind of like a shadow member of the board, so to speak, maybe giving them the advice on who to hire or how to go about it as opposed to him being the guy?
I think Verge Ausberry was pretty clear that he has a relationship with Nick Saban that goes back and that they talk, on a fairly regular basis. I would be shocked if Verge Ausberry, one of his first calls wasn't to Nick Saban and say, hey, what do you think? And, oh, by the way, what you wouldn't happen to be interested in, Coach. You brought up Palmineri a little earlier. Ray Tanner, who was the athletic director of South Carolina, called him for advice on who to hire as a coach. And said, wait a minute, you're interested? Okay, why don't you take the job? I don't think that's going to happen here with Nick, but certainly his input is going to be very, very strong, well-respected if you ask him. And his coaching tree is vast. His knowledge of the game is unmatched. Why wouldn't you want to ask that guy what he thought?
Yeah, it's kind of like Hollywood. Sometimes they call an actor and say, who should we get to play this role? Well, why not me? I'll do it.
Yes.
I'll be the leading man.
Really? You will? Okay, fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I know at least one member of the media, our good friend Mike Scarborough, whose face turns red and he might pop a blood vessel even discussing like Nick Saban. He thinks it's ridiculous. And the part of your brain that goes to logic says, no way. And then the part that believes in, sunsets and the Santa Claus and whatnot. I talked to a player yesterday who played for Nick Saban who says, I believe in Santa Claus. So he thinks that maybe the chances are good, but don't think it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. I just thought of this, Charlie, real quick. So in 2 seasons, LSU is scheduled to play at the Alabama Crimson Tide. Can you imagine Nick Saban at 76 years old, down in the tunnel with the LSU Tigers about to charge on the field at Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium to play against Alabama? I know my dad right now, he's 81. He doesn't want any stress and anxiety in his life. At 76, would you even want to take that on again?
No. The short answer is no. But both of us covered Saban here, and we watched him throughout his career. I take Nick at his word when he says, you know what, I can't do it the way I used to do it. And if I can't do it that way anymore, I don't want to do it. And I don't think, this is just my opinion on Saban, I don't think he got out because he couldn't coach anymore. He was still coaching at a really high level. They were one drive away from being in the national championship game his last year. So it's not that. And I don't think it's NIL. I think he would be okay with there being some kind of reasonable payment system to the players. I think the part that Saban couldn't stomach was the transfer portal. And the transfer portal that requires you to recruit every player on your roster every single day. And this is just my opinion. Obviously, I haven't talked to Nick. I don't think he could stomach having to kiss that many behinds every day, every minute of every day. He coaches kids hard, okay? And it's been uber successful for him. And I think the day that you coach a kid hard, or you don't go over there and make out like he's the greatest football player ever to lace up a pair of cleats, that they immediately jump into transfer portal. I think that's what he means when he says, I can't do it the way I used to do it. Not so much the energy levels or things like that, because
right.
he's a young 74.
Sure.
I think it's that. I think it's that he can't coach the way he wants to with the transfer portal. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think Matt Mauck told me one time, he said Saban would detest giving a freshman out of high school a bunch of money who hasn't proven himself yet. Those are the kind of things I think that are difficult for him. And like you said, I mean, I think you and I agree that we get tired sometimes of the sentiment at a post-game press conference. He threw somebody under the bus, like a coach at a press conference. This is a much more prominent thing now with every press conference going out on YouTube and, parents can watch this stuff now. Well, if you gave up 7 quarterback sacks and the coach says, we had a hard time protecting today, he's just telling the truth. I don't know, throwing somebody in the bus, but that's another dynamic. It's like these guys have so much pressure on them to win, but then they're not allowed to even like coach hard or tell you what happened out there.
And they can tell you, this is all on me. And then it's, no, you're blaming the players. Well, I didn't give up any of those sacks. And I know Matt Mulkey, from the time covering him, one of my favorite guys to cover. But I disagree with him on that a little bit. I don't think Saban had as big of a problem throwing accolades at freshmen because he was such a good recruiter. Okay, he had to do that. He learned how to do that very early in his career, and he had to go out and lavish all of this praise and do all of these things to get recruits to campus. So it might not have been the NIL cash payments. Stop your jokes right now. But it was an awful lot of rear end kissing to get those kids to go to school and play for him. So he had done that before. He had given a lot to freshmen who hadn't proven anything. I think it's the continuing to do it when they get to campus and still have an entitled attitude. Or I would have loved to have been there the day whatever player it was went in there and wanted to renegotiate his NIL deal in the middle of his freshman or sophomore year. That's the day I think that Saban flies off the handle and goes, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah, well, the famous Bill Parcells quote, if they want you to cook, they should allow you to buy the groceries. He wasn't purchasing groceries at the convenience he was in years past. I mean, he wants control, and the control was falling out of his grasp in that regard.
And it's a harder job now, okay? Vanderbilt's got 8 wins. Indiana's got 11 wins. Texas Tech's got 10 wins. I don't think that Nick Saban ever had to worry about any of those teams and 50 more. I'll draw an analogy. Okay, when Skip Bertman won his 5 national titles, Coastal Carolina wasn't a thing. Okay, Stony Brook wasn't a thing. Vanderbilt was a doormat in the league at that time. By the time you get 20 years later, there are programs that are now legitimate national factors that never were before. This is harder now. And we used to think, well, you could do it maybe in basketball because there's not as many players, or baseball because there's not as many players. You'll never be able to do that in football, and we were wrong on that too.
Well, and it's harder to judge coaches, I find, right? Because guys like Mike Gundy, Dabo Swinney, we consider those guys upper echelon coaches for the wins and losses they produced, and they kind of got boat raced in this thing, NIL and so forth, left behind. Gundy got fired, and Swinney, I think, is barely at 500 right now this year. And so I guess there's trendsetters and copycats and whatnot. Will people start to go away from the big name coach like a Brian Kelly and give it to a hungrier guy and use the $5 million instead of paying a coach $10 million, pay him $5 million and use $5 million for NIL or whatever the case may be? Coaching is still important, we know that, but is it as important as it used to be?
Well, answer me this. Who are the big name coaches that you can go out and hire? Because if you take the candidates that are out there and there's a lot of good jobs out there, how many of those candidates have won 2 conference championships? 2. And certainly not at the Power 4 level. Over the last 15 years, between Nick Saban and Urban Meyer and Kirby Smart and Dabo Swinney and whoever was coaching at Ohio State, before and after Urban Meyer, Ryan Day or Jim Tressel, how many coaches have multiple conference championships? Forget about national championships, conference championships. Because once you get past Kirby Smart and Ryan Day and Dabo Swinney, man, the list dries up in a hurry. Lane Kiffin is the top name on everybody's board. He's never won the Southeastern Conference. He's never even been in the Southeastern Conference championship game. Now, he's won a lot of games, but he hasn't won a championship, and that's the top name on the list. So when you say these top names on the list, most of them have retired in the last few years, and they soaked up so many of those titles in the last 20 years. So there's not that that next tier of coaches that comes with this championship pedigree, you're playing all of them a little bit on the come, on what they're going to be able to do.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny to look back on who was hot and who was I heard you and Jimmy talking about Tom Herman the other day. He was the guy. Got to get this guy. 2016 when Coach O was the interim head coach, and Tom Herman went 6-16 at Florida Atlantic and got fired last year. I think he's out of coaching at the moment. I don't think he's coaching for anybody.
You probably get him.
Yeah, he's out there. Good old Tom Herman. Seemed like a nice guy too, from what I remember. These young offensive guys, they're often not the nicest guys in the world. I interviewed Lincoln Riley one time on the red carpet at the 2019 ESPN, the College Football Awards, in which LSU won every award, it felt like, that night. I tried to talk to him, just squeeze him for some sound about the playoff game, and he stared at me like an alien. He didn't want to talk to me very, very much. But
maybe he knew it was about to happen.
Yeah, he's about to give up 63, right, to LSU and company. Well, let's just talk about Kiffin for a moment. So his family apparently is touring Baton Rouge. What do we think about Kiffin? I mean, he had the reputation maybe as an immature job hopper, but he's been at Ole Miss now his 6th year, and he is 31-6 in his last 3 years. He's 17-6 in the SEC during that time span, and this is the old case of, well, he did this at Ole Miss. If he goes to LSU, he'll do this.
He's not trying to hide his interests. Either that, or he is just pulling the ultimate troll job on 3 different universities, right? Because as soon as I saw this plane, okay, wait a minute, they're chasing ghosts again. Okay, we do this every time. I remember the last time there was a flight. I don't even remember where it was from. They were like, "That's the next LSU coach," and it turned out it was some business guy who didn't even know they were playing football at LSU. So I kind of scoffed at it first, and then we found out, no, it's real. And it's like, that's awfully strange. Why would you be so public about something that you could be private about if you wanted to? I'll tell you a great story about when Jerry DiNardo got the job here. And I watched your predecessors here at WAFB follow him around the campus at LSU. Had a camera on him everywhere he went. Watched the plane land, watched him drive him over to the athletic department, watched him get out, go in the building, tour the campus, the whole thing. I mean, it was so public. That was in 1994. Well, now nobody does that because the internet explodes, right? Social media certainly explodes. So he's pulling something from 1994 that he doesn't have to. Now, why does Lane do what Lane does? You'd have to ask him. But he's, at least to this point, being a whole lot more public about something that usually is handled in private.
Yeah. Well, not to go on too big of a history lesson, but in 1986, when Ornsparger left, we have interviews, like the candidates would come on campus and do an interview with the local TV station, including Steve Spurrier. Well, it's a great job. It's the flagship university in the state. I'd love to have it, And like you said, I mean, you wish deer hunting was that wide open, that they come out, in the wide open like that. Usually, hidden, kept away, secrets, right?
I'm going to come in here and sift through your archives one summer day when I got nothing to do, because some of that film is just, it's priceless to see it. So I don't know. I do know that when agents have this kind of leverage, and certainly Jimmy Sexton has the ultimate leverage right now. He's got the hottest candidate available, if we're going to use that word, and 3 universities that are absolutely willing to go to great lengths to make sure that he's their coach next year. Well, that's as good a position as you can be in as an agent and for your client. So why would you give up any of that leverage? And I think that's what I would tell any administrator at any of these schools who are anxious for him to make a decision, or any politician in either state that is anxious for him to make a decision. They're not going to let go of that leverage until they decide they have to.
Yeah. A couple more quick things on Kiffin. He became an NFL coach entirely too young. That was 2007. He went 4-12. Then in 2008, they started 1-3. He got fired. He spent 1 year at Tennessee 7-6, 4-4. Then he bolted for USC. At USC, he was 28-15 overall, 7-12 in the conference. Did the Alabama rehab program, right? Then went to Florida Atlantic, and then was 26-13 there, and 18-6 in conference play. And now, as we said, he's at Ole Miss. And look, he just turned 50 years old. Is he now, hitting? Nick Saban didn't win a national championship, I don't think, till he's 52 over here. Is Kiffin now? I'm not saying Kiffin's going to win a national title or not, but is he, kind of hitting those golden years of his coaching, maturity, knowledge, all those things?
Yeah, you learn on somebody else's ticket, and then you go and you win. I can't imagine anybody that's available that's more qualified, that has been a coach at the head coaching level in the SEC, assistant coach under Saban. You just read his resume. I don't have to do it again. Offensively, he is gifted. His father was as good a defensive coach as has come through. I can't imagine anybody else that's more qualified that you could realistically hire at this point.
Well, you've been through more of these than I have. How many times have you talked a lot about 2 or 3 people and the guy comes out of left field, like somebody you hadn't talked about? We didn't talk a whole lot about Brian Kelly, did we? My understanding is they went to him in October, offered him, not interested, offer him a $100 million contract. Somebody close to him said, you cannot turn that down. You have to go.
Les was in the bullpen. Les was one of 2 or 3 or 4. It was Les. It was Bobby Petrino. It was Houston Nutt. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit Jimbo Fisher.
Del Rio was talked about, but
and that kind of fell through. He had a deal with Jacksonville, and so Les was on the board early, but Nick wasn't. Ed, you just described how that came on. Ed Kelly, no. DiNardo was down the list. I mean, they had a press conference set up to announce Pat Sullivan as the head coach. No, you're right. Most of the time, it's not the guy that is, the guy that makes the most sense is, and usually doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, in different sport, but Jay Johnson was, when did he come into the picture? Was that kind of a surprise? I mean, O'Sullivan got the early steam, and then they kind of investigated and decided that was not a good route to go. And who was the guy?
Pat Casey.
Pat Casey.
Talked a little better from Oregon State. Yeah, I think Jay Johnson was in that initial list of names, but he wasn't at the top of it.
Yeah.
That fair?
Yeah. And then a whole other sport, whole other situation. But Kim Mulkey is the one time I can remember where there was like one big name, and it seemed too good to be true, and no way. And it happened, and it was that's when Santa Claus came.
and unique circumstances because of where she was from. And, she is, I think we'll agree, a unique personality. So she decided that she wanted to come back closer to home to finish her career, and, that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I don't think that Kim Mulkey and the governor will be having Thanksgiving dinner, but hopefully she's got a good team so far. I mean, they haven't played anybody yet, but they
a bunch of points, don't they?
They are scorching people early on in the year. Let's just talk about, before you go here, let's talk about a few others. So, a couple of people have told me Eli Drinkwitz would kill it at LSU if he got the opportunity. Obsessed with building a roster, recruiting. He knows the modern day landscape of college football. The people at Missouri who give Missouri their money feel like they're getting a good investment because they know that guy is going to work hard. There's been some criticism about he hasn't won a whole lot of big games up there. Missouri does not have a rich tradition. It's cold. They don't have a whole lot of high school football players there, and it's real superficial, but some people don't like the way he looks, that he doesn't look like a football coach. So that's Twitter, I guess. But just your thoughts on Eli Drinkwitz.
I think Eli Drinkwitz would win here. He has coached in his conference at a place that is not the most resource-laden and won a lot of games. His record against teams with winning records isn't as good as you would like, but he's not the only coach like that, okay? I mean, James Franklin was winning plenty of games at Penn State but couldn't quite break through. Well, you're waiting for him to break through. I think Eli Drinkwitz would win here, but winning here is not
8-4.
winning. No, that's the losing record.
That's right.
That 8-4 is a losing record. I mean, I used to say 7-5 was a losing record because, well, you buy 3 wins every year. I mean, seriously, you buy 3 wins every year. So if you go 7-5, that really means you went 4-5. Well, now 8-4, that's a losing record because if you only beat the wins that you buy in the non-conference and the absolute bottom of the conference, nobody gives you any credit for that.
No offense, you and I could be standing there on that sideline, and LSU's going to win that game.
The laundry wins those games. I'm sorry, the uniforms win those games. They do. I mean, you'll lose one every 10 years or so, but mostly the uniforms win those games. So you get no credit for that. 8-4 is a losing record. And the toughest thing, we'll bring up Jerry DiNardo's name again, when he got to 10 wins his third year here.
No second, 96, 10-2, right?
Oh, that's right. It was 96. Yeah, it was his second season.
Get a life, Jacques.
Yeah, that's right. And he said, listen, to take a team from a losing record, this is in 1995, from a losing record to a winning record, he says that a lot of coaches can do that. He says to go from 5 wins to 8 wins to 9 wins, you can do that. It's an 11-game schedule. He says the tough part is going from 10 wins to 12 wins. Mm-hmm. And that stuck with me all this time. There's a lot of guys can come in here and win 10 games. I mean, Eli Drinkwitz is one. I know you got a list of guys you want to talk about. There's a lot of guys come in here and win 10 games. I don't know how many can win 12. And that's the real tough part. That's when you got to beat the Georgias, the Texas, the Alabamas, the absolute elite of the sport. That's the tough part.
Well, I've heard you talk about it before. 1996, they won 10 games. The 2 games they lost, they went to Florida and got smashed. They were nowhere in the ballpark with Florida at the height of Steve Spurrier, and they played Alabama here in Tiger Stadium. They scored that early touchdown. They took off the board, and then Sean Alexander, ran wild, and they lost 26-0. So your 2 losses where you were a far away from being elite, but you beat pretty much everyone else you were supposed to beat. So that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, they lost those 2 games by a combined total of, I think it was 60-something points. So that's the thing. When you talk about can they win, Brian Kelly won here. I mean, he was 20 games over 500. He had a Heisman Trophy winner. He went to the SEC championship game. I mean, Ole Miss, look, they're in the midst of their best season ever since Johnny Vaught. They're not going to the SEC championship game unless they get some help. Kelly went to the SEC championship game, but that's winning now is in the playoffs, making a run. That's what winning is now.
Yeah.
It may not be fair, but you're awfully well compensated, so that's the expectation.
Let's put a cap on Kelly real quick because I think I kind of talked to you about this. Look, winning and losing is the bottom line, but I think how you treat people and if you try to engage the state and, at least try to be one of them to an extent helps your legacy. We've talked about Maneri. I mean, he couldn't have treated us any better, the media, right? And if he said no to a charity event, or he must have been really busy because I don't know if anyone did more than he did. But so basically, Dietzel left on his own from LSU, and so did Arnsparger and Saban. Those are and then Bo Ryan, the tragic plane crash. Outside of that, everybody here has either been pushed out or fired, right?
Yeah, without thinking about it too much. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought Kelly was good to us in terms of he gave us more media access to watch practice and video practice than any coach I've ever covered. I thought his press conferences, he answered questions pretty well. He went off a couple of times, but he wasn't as mean, for lack of a better word, as I thought watching him from afar at Notre Dame. But I just felt like whether it was the coach's show where they didn't allow people to go up and take pictures with him or sign autographs, or the day he landed on the plane and they had all those people on the fence and he gave him a little wave from a mile away and got in the car and took off. The fit thing, if he would have won, he would have fit. But I think nobody fits here initially, but you learn how to fit, and he never learned how to fit.
Yeah, but it's still the winning and losing.
Yeah.
Orgeron fit here until he didn't. And it wasn't that he didn't fit here. He didn't win. Okay, if Kelly would have won more, it would have been fine.
Right.
DiNardo, whoever. It's about winning and losing. All those things become much more amplified when you are not winning. Your accent, how you treated somebody, and don't for one second discount the effect that social media has on this thing. Because since we're doing history lessons here, if in 1995 Jerry DiNardo had blown off some autograph seeker or some fan, well, that person would have known, and whoever they happen to tell. Now, when the coach doesn't stop for a picture or doesn't say hello or whatever,
constant microscope.
Yeah, it's going to be blown up. It's going to be retweeted. It's going to be amplified as much as possible. So it's still about winning and losing, and the rest of that stuff will fall into place.
Well, and we've heard it over the years. Anything is justified if you're winning, right? If he's winning, let him go play golf. Who cares how much golf he plays? Oh, he's a good coach. He lets his assistant coaches coach. He delegates.
Steve Spurrier played more golf probably than any coach in the 90s in the SEC. Beat the stew out of everybody, though, right? So play all the golf you want, coach.
It was that memorable thing he was talking about Jim Haslett. He called him Hazlett. Yeah. He goes, he gets up at 4 a.m, not helping him much.
That's right. Very good. Mostly it's about, can you win? Now, it will help you win. Here's where the fit part comes in. It will help you win if you establish relationships. If you establish relationships with high school coaches, if you establish relationships with boosters. Remember, the number one job of a coach now that didn't used to be is you got to be a fundraiser. And I'll go back to, this is an old political saying, from the day a candidate gets hired, that candidate has to raise a certain amount of money, depending on what the race it is, from that time to get reelected. Well, I think it's that way for football coaches now. From the day that they sign their class in the portal and in the high school class, they've got to raise a certain amount of money for next year's team and the team after that. So fit matters when you're going to ask people for money. It would help if you were nice. It would help if they want to sit down and have a meal with you before they write you a check. And I'm sorry, but that is as big a part of what coaches have to do now. And almost none of them like it. I mean, it's not a glamorous part of the job, but it is every bit necessary. Brian Kelly had to go do it last December. And there was a piece, I forgot who wrote it, that said, did you think when you took this job that you'd be out hustling money? No, I didn't. But you have to now.
Yeah. And, if you take your wife out to dinner and you try the new fancy steak restaurant in town and y'all both get a filet mignon, a bottle of wine and everything, you spend $400 on your meal and it wasn't good and the service was bad and all that, you're not going to go back.
Go back.
So if Brian Kelly remains the head coach after all these people put up $20 million, hey, we need $20 million again. Well, my experience wasn't good last year.
And that is as big a reason as any that he's not still a coach here.
Yeah, and the Q word I heard Jimmy talk about today, quit. When your team starts quitting.
The second half of the A&M game was pretty ugly. Pretty ugly.
All right, a couple more things I appreciate because this guy talks all the time, and I ask him on his spare time to come in and talk some more, and he's doing a good job talking so far. So, Jon Sumrall, Tulane, the guys in the media in New Orleans say this guy, if you don't hire him, somebody else is going to hire him. He's one of the best things we've covered here, one of the best coaches we've ever seen here. Now, Willie Fritz won before him, and he kept winning after, so it's not like they were terrible when he took over. He's only been a head coach, I think, a total of 4 years. He did a great job at Troy also. So, some people, back to the same people that say, I don't like the way Eli Drinkwitz looks, same people say, well, we don't hire the Tulane coach. We're LSU. Would they hire? I know Verge thinks highly of Sumrall.
Yeah, I think that Jon Sumrall is going to be a really good coach in the SEC. I think there's a really good chance he'll end up at Auburn. Mm-hmm. He's from Huntsville. He grew up in Huntsville, Alabama. So I think that's a reasonable destination for him. If LSU hired him, I think he would do well here. I think he would win here. He's tough, very good defensive coach. The youth, the hunger is all there. I think he's going to be really successful wherever he ends up. If you don't hire him because he's only got 4 years as a head coach or because of whatever other reason that you think, maybe you just think, hey, he's a really good coach, I got somebody better, that's fine. But if you say you can't hire him because he's a Tulane coach, I think that's a really bad reason.
Yeah.
And I use this example a lot. Ohio State, this is arguably the number one football program in the country, not just team this year, the number one football program in the country, hired Jim Tressel. okay, who was at Youngstown State. Now, he had won championships at Youngstown State. This would be the LSU equivalent of the head coach at McNeese State winning the FCS
yeah.
national championship and being hired at LSU. And you could imagine you're hiring the McNeese coach. Well, they hired that coach. Why? Because he was really good. I think you can find really good coaches in different places. So just to say, well, he coached at Tulane, so we don't want him, I think it's a really bad reason. Yeah. Now, if there's other reasons, you got somebody bad, okay, that's fine. But I thought it was a bad reason to discount Billy Napier. And I know that didn't work out for Florida, but if you think, okay, I don't think that this guy's going to succeed at the SEC level, that's fine. But if you say, well, I'm not even going to consider an in-state coach because that's beneath us, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah. Well, Will Muschamp got a second chance in the SEC, and I guess it didn't work out both times. But I'd like to see Napier eventually get another chance. I don't know if he was set up to fail there or whatever. I mean, he did things. We're both from Lafayette. He did things in Lafayette that have never been done before and may never be done again. The amount that he won there, and so the Florida job was the big job. It didn't work out. He walks away with a lot of money either way. I've always liked him. I've never heard anybody say he's a bad dude or, you know.
I'll give you a hot name right now that's a little bit off not the very top, but is right in the next level, is Eric Morris at North Texas, okay? He's been linked to the job at Oklahoma State, maybe another job. He's been there. He was at Incarnate Word before that, Cam Ward. Okay, and now he's been at North Texas, third year, and they're 9-1, I believe. If he gets the Oklahoma State job, if you're at North Texas, wouldn't you hire Billy Napier? Yeah. To start the road back. And Lane Kiffin, who's the belle of the ball right now, had to go to Florida Atlantic. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if he goes to North Texas, wouldn't that be a job he'd come back and work his way back up to another Power 4 job? I mean, I'm just connecting dots here.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
An idea.
Hugh Freeze went to Everett, right?
Yeah.
Petrino circled. It's funny he's an interim coach, huh? The head coach, the interim.
I noticed on Saturday, every bit as nice and cordial and benevolent as he was the last time he was in Tiger Stadium.
The people at LSU, when he interviewed, when they hired Les, they said he came in and drew stuff up on the board, and it's like, this guy's a genius, offensive genius. And it's like, but his personality not so nice. I don't think we want to hire this guy.
Skip told a great story about when they interviewed him the first time, which was as Skip says, it was in this seedy motel in Memphis because we didn't want anybody to know. And so you can just imagine Skip Bertman and the LSU party going to meet Bobby Petrino in this hotel in Memphis that nobody would ever go to. Anyway,
there's gunshots outside here.
Yeah, it's a terrible neighborhood.
The worst bowl experience perhaps in LSU history, the 1985 Liberty Bowl. I've heard all about it. They had nothing to eat. They were practicing in the parking lot. It's freezing cold. They got guys driving in from all parts of the country, and they lose 21-7 to Baylor. Not fun.
They had Christmas dinner at the 7-Eleven.
Yeah. Yeah, took all the hot dogs.
The burritos in the microwave, yeah.
Okay, so there's a number of guys who are coaching at their alma maters. The Georgia Tech guy.
Brent Key.
Clark Lee, which I saw
Vandy.
somebody after the game said when Vanderbilt beat LSU, nobody gets more out of their talent than Clark Lee. Nobody gets less out of their talent than Brian Kelly head-to-head in that game. Clark Lee, if he was a basketball coach, you'd say, man, they run the weave at the top of the key. Mm-hmm. They don't turn the ball over. Nice crisp bounce passes. They keep the ball away from the other team, And then you've got the guy at Arizona State who's really young.
Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah. See, that's why I brought Charlie in right here. I'm poorly researched. And then you got the guys.
Jeff Brom at
Louisville. They're trying to sweeten the pot for him and get him to stay. And then you got, I heard you on the radio, hard passes, like names that are out there that may be past their prime. A Jimbo Fisher, who's got strong ties to LSU. You could probably sell that pretty well 5 years ago, 10 years ago right now. James Franklin, and you felt like he's Brian Kelly all over again, kind of, but younger.
You're talking about two guys who I really at one point wanted to be the coach at LSU. When Jimbo was right before he won the national championship, I said, you know what, he would be an excellent coach at LSU. I will always wonder what would have happened if Nick Saban had recommended him instead of Houston Nutt when Les Miles got the job. Jimbo might have been great. He might not have been ready at that point. I don't know. My gut is
he was late 30s, young.
Yeah, what would have been considered really young then, which is no longer the case. My gut is that Jimbo would have done really well as a coach then. And when they tried to fire Les the first time, my gut is that Jimbo would have done really well here. But I don't think that would work really well. And the last time they hired a coach, I thought James Franklin would have been a really good fit here. I thought that he had coached in the SEC at a really difficult spot at Vandy and had done well, had gone to Penn State and won a bunch of games and just couldn't get over the hump, and I thought maybe he could get over the hump here. But that ship has sailed too.
I heard whispers even when the LSU hired Brian Kelly that Jimbo, they might have wanted him to some extent. Woodward always liked him.
Yeah, he had a great relationship with Scott Woodward.
Yeah.
And look, I've always liked Jimbo. I thought Jimbo was a good coach. He was a really good recruiter. And there was a time when I thought Jimbo Fisher was on the cutting edge offensively. And if you don't think that, go back and look at some of the LSU numbers in 2005, 2006, when they had, offensive personnel that was just phenomenal. He was balanced. He was very, very good. And at this time it's Florida State. Unfortunately, he did not make many adjustments. And by the time he finished at Texas A&M, the offensive system that he was running had become too convoluted for college quarterbacks to really. And this is coming. I don't play the position, Jacques. This is coming from me talking to quarterbacks. Okay.
Yeah.
It had just. It passed him by a little bit.
We went and did an interview with him 2 summers ago for our next documentary project, which is kind of wide open. We're not sure what it's going to be. We need to bring it in close. It's wide right now, but there's no doubt he loved his time at LSU. It's very special to him. And he's a computer, like talking to him about games, and he remembers the play, it was Z-Wag, blah, 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 and Rohan rolled out, and Josh Reed, blah, 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 and Clayton came over. I mean, he recounts the statistics. Rohan Davey, Alabama, 528 yards passing. Josh Reed, 291 yards receiving. So he remembers it all like it happened yesterday. So,
and he was right there in the middle of all that.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. He was a really good offensive play caller. I thought he was at that time. I thought he was as good as anybody in the game.
Yeah. Well, and I joked, this is probably not going to happen, but you could put the band back together. They're all out there, right? You get Saban, Muschamp, Jimbo, get Dooley to wear some purple pants instead of orange ones. Bring him back.
You probably priced out on Kirby Smart as a graduate assistant, though.
Yeah, good.
I don't think that one would work.
Who's the guy? I didn't even realize he was here. Became the coach of the Jets. Adam Gase.
Yeah.
He was like way down getting coffee.
Right. He was their Joe Brady.
Yeah, Joe Brady.
The Saints.
Which is another thing, real quick. He's high on these Vegas. He spent 1 year in college football here, and I don't want to take away anything that he did. He was a huge impact on things. I just kind of think sometimes there's a few LSU fans that are 35 and younger that think that Joe Brady invented college football. They just why hire him, But he doesn't want to recruit. He wants to go in a building and coach football. That's it.
Yeah, he was a pro guy, and not for nothing, but he had some pretty good personnel to work with the year that he was here. And he's doing a nice job in Buffalo, okay? Yeah. Where he also has a pretty good quarterback to work with. I think Joe Brady's a good coach. I think he'll be a head coach in the NFL soon.
Yeah. If you're a head coach, you can't win for losing sometimes. Like, I don't have enough talent, so we don't win. Then I get talent, and the only reason you're winning is because you have talent, I mean,
it's the one, well, because I like him or I don't like him, What were you telling me about Drinkwitz? I don't like the way he looks, okay? Well, some coaches just, I don't like that guy. And I've seen that happen when coaches here have had winning record. I don't like that guy. Why? I just don't like that guy. Okay, well, that's up to you.
Let's and I know I said I was letting you go 15 minutes ago, but we'll put a cap on. The LSU is still playing football games, which is kind of the unfortunate thing, that they still have 2 games left, and these games are kind of, page 3 or 4 in what's going on right now. But my message real quick about the Arkansas win. Look, they hadn't won a game in over a month. It's good for everybody. Frank Wilson, from a historical perspective, becomes the first black head coach in LSU history to win a game. Michael Van Buren did a nice job distributing the ball, didn't turn the ball over. So be happy about that. But let's be a little measured too, right? That Arkansas has now lost 8 straight games. And in their losses, this was the fewest amount of points they gave up. Still, LSU could only score 23 points in the game. Defensively, they made a lot of huge plays. And so it is a bit funny that some people, a few, that when they beat Florida and South Carolina, it's terrible, and now they win a 1-point game over Arkansas, and it's like, make Frank Wilson the coach and make him the coach now.
Well, I didn't hear anybody say that, but I was happy for Frank. I know the amount of time that Frank has spent coaching football in this state, and you could tell it was very apparent how much that win meant to him and to a lot of the kids on that team who were recruited by him, coached by him. So I was happy for them that they won on Saturday. The fans that are, well, that's terrible. You root against your own team at times. I've seen this at the college level and the pro level. At the college level, it's, I hope they lose so they'll get rid of the coach. Well, they've already gotten rid of the coach. Okay, so you just go root for them, because the other reason to root against your team is that they get a higher draft choice. Well, they're not getting a higher draft choice. Okay, so why not hope that they win? The last 3 games now, the last 2 games that are still in the regular season schedule. You can take these. Everything doesn't have to be big picture. This can be just these kids who have worked hard and it hasn't worked out exactly the way they wanted, went out and won a football game. Good for them. Let's clap. Let's go get something to eat and go home. There's nothing wrong with that. And right. I was happy for that group on Saturday.
I'm happy for Frank Wilson, too. I mean, look, he's a Louisiana legend in terms of coaching and all the people he's coached and recruited over the years, including Leonard Fournette. He talked about him a bit today. And he was my neighbor. He lived in my neighborhood. It goes to show you how things quickly pass. He moved out 2 months ago, and I didn't even know he had moved out. But you hope he does well at the end of the year. And I know he's got a lot of support. And then hopefully, I don't know what's going to happen with the next staff. Hopefully he stays. Let's finish with Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier had 8 300-yard passing games last year. He had 2 400-yard passing games. He hasn't had any this year. He's been compromised all year, right? Some people have said, oh, he's healthy. His decision-making has always been the thing. It's the joke in the Raising Cane's commercial. Your dad called in your order. He doesn't trust your decision-making. Yeah. We've been knowing that for years, but now it's perhaps sometimes some bad decision-making with an arm that's not live.
You ever have something that hurts, but it doesn't hurt all the time? A back, a neck, a shoulder, an elbow, something, and you say, well, I have good days and bad days while I'm going through this. This is my opinion only. I hadn't talked to Garrett Nussmeier, certainly hadn't talked to his doctor or any of the trainers over there. I think that he was hurt, okay? Injured, not all the time, not to the point where he couldn't play, but I think he was hurt. And I think there were times that you looked at him and it's like, okay, that looked pretty good. And then there were times where you're like, man, he didn't get anything on that throw. And with that oblique or ab injury that you're talking about, that requires you twist your midsection to throw the football, and if it hurts, your body's going to adjust and it's going to mess with your mechanics, because to do it right mechanically might hurt, and so your body just does something instinctively to not hurt. I think that's what's been going on with Garrett Nussmeier all season. That's just my opinion, is that there has been an injury that has flared up sometimes worse than others, because there are throws you make and go, okay, well, that looked pretty good.
The one he made against South Carolina, that Hilton dropped, that looked like the Oklahoma game last year when he hit him for 2 deep ones.
He zipped a couple of balls in the first half against Alabama, which is the last time we saw him play. But there were other throws that sailed or that were inaccurate or that were just short balls earlier in the season. So that's what I think happened with him. And I think if they had it to do over again, they might have said, you know what, let's sit him against Southeastern. Mm-hmm. Maybe let's even sit him against Ole Miss, even if it costs us a game, because then you get 3+ weeks, almost 4 weeks to really let him heal, and then see if you're there for the October part of the schedule. But they didn't do that. So
yeah. Well, and real quick, I try not. No one listens to me. I don't try to tell people what to do. But when they announce him for senior day and he runs out, please don't boo. Right? That's the time to.
I would hope not.
Please don't. There's a few. There'll be a few in the student section maybe, but that's a time when a guy's running out. You're acknowledging, okay, you gave us 5 years. You did your best.
Garrett Nussmeier could very easily say today, you know what, there's nothing more for me to gain here. I'm going out to Arizona and work with a personal trainer until the draft. And I would even say, you know what, maybe that's in your best interest personally. He's not. He's on the sideline. He's working with this guy. When they benched him against Alabama, he didn't go put a towel over his head and sit on the bench and sulk. He was there. He was encouraging him. He had tears in his eyes. It means something to him. I think that should be applauded. Even if it didn't turn out the way he or the team wanted this year.
Charlie, thanks for your time. Thanks for keeping me in check.
Yeah.
And obviously ESPN 104.5 Monday through Friday with Jimmy at all your fine eating establishments in Baton Rouge. The Handycast, the pregame, postgame. They're not doing those 8:15 kickoffs anymore, but the 6:30 ones keep you late enough with Richard Dixon.
Hey, when they said 2:30 for Oklahoma, I was fine with that. No problem.
Yeah. We don't hate those 11:30 kickoffs as much as some other people do. I'm Jacques Doucet. He is Charlie Hanagriff. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you later.